How about it from TYT? He's Michael Shure, everybody.
Yes.
And the former senior correspondent for ABC, former White House correspondent for ABC as well, the award-winning Jim Avila.
Good morning. I'm ready to duck at any time for a Kim McAllister bullet.
Kim,
she is on fire.
She did mention in the last hour having spoken to you guys last week, and then I actually got an email along these same lines suggesting that you guys made people feel easier about the upcoming general election and the fact that Trump you didn't think was going to carry it. Now, I'll get to the trial in a second. I feel as though the trial, which will not happen before the election, I don't think. I want to get your thoughts. But the email I got today, and I'll just summarize it, was they made me feel better about things, but then this week, the more I see, the more worried I get. And Kim sort of was in that same camp. I'd love your thoughts on what we've seen this week with the indictment of the president, but I also would like to put it in the context of, is this going to ultimately be viewed as just another indictment, even though, as I've suggested, the guy was engineering a coup. It's very different than the other indictments. But might it all just come down to whether or not Trump can win the election and erase it all? Start with you, Michael Shure.
Look, I mean, I think Jim and I have been pretty consistent on this over a long period of time. There is a ceiling for Donald Trump. There also is a floor, and that floor seems impenetrable. But I now believe that ceiling is impenetrable as well, and that these things do not matter to a lot of the people that follow him and like him and want to own the libs as more than they care about, domestic policy and foreign policy, clearly. So I don't think these things matter in American history. They matter. I don't also think that it's out of the question that this trial could happen before the election. These prosecutors and these district attorneys and judges can work things out so some can be heard before others. It's a tight schedule, to be sure, before the election. But I don't think that I don't think you're talking about something that is going to massively alter the outcome as we know it now. I think Jim and I have been consistent. I don't think Donald Trump has a chance of being president again. I mean, he has a chance because he might be the candidate, but I don't think he has a chance of winning the presidency. So to that end, I don't think it matters. But that's frustrating, too, because it should matter more than it does.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this week has changed my opinion that Donald Trump is a flawed candidate who will not appeal to independents or even moderate Republicans when it comes down to voting between a guy like Joe Biden, who is not, he doesn't scare anybody. He doesn't even scare, the moderate Republicans. He is not that guy. He's kind of he's a safe choice. And I think that will be again what America is looking for, just as they were looking for that in 2020. So I don't think there's a problem with that. The polls are 43-43 right now, but that is sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, those are national polls, right? Yeah,
that's largely because Biden. There's a group of people who legitimately worry that Joe Biden is too old. And so they're hoping for another candidate. But when it plays out and there isn't another candidate, and when it really is Joe Biden against Donald Trump, Biden will win again. And I think he'll win by upwards of 5 or 6 points, only because people are motivated to come out and vote against Donald Trump, no matter who the other candidate is.
And some of the magic I am gleaning, and I'm not just looking through rose-colored glasses here. I'm surprised by how little fanfare there has been in the places where these arraignments happen, when Trump has been out in public, in anticipation at courthouses, outside courthouses, behind barricades. None of
Where were the big demonstrations yesterday? There were none.
None. And these are people who used to go, from all parts of the country, as we have learned from January 6th. But again, it's a different kind of fire now, but from everywhere, even in Florida, where you have a good showing that can get in a car and be there in an hour and a half, a good showing of support for Donald Trump in a state that he won. Not much, nothing. Georgia, we could see it when they hand down their indictments, but you read those tea leaves a little bit and you think that there is some of this that is gone. And the NBC News poll that came out, I think it was today, may have been yesterday, showing that both of these candidates have negative ratings. Trump worse than Biden, and Biden's the sitting president.
Yeah, it's just
what I'm more concerned about is that when I was watching yesterday, Mark, and I texted you a little bit about this, and I'm interested to see what Michael has to say. So I worked at network news, both NBC and ABC, was very involved in their nightly news programs, was the lead reporter on both, was involved in all the meetings that go on before we get on the air. And I was very disappointed in what the networks did yesterday, all three of them. They had less than one entire segment, covering this historic, never happened story. I hate to sound like the old man, but when I was there, when Brokaw and Jennings and Rather were anchoring these newscasts, they would have blown out the whole first half hour, added a half hour for the affiliates. They could take it and get the rest of the news if they wanted to. It would have been a special edition. This, we can't, there are lots of angles that were not reported yesterday. We didn't hear a story yesterday on the evening news about how none of the Republicans in the Congress were quiet. We're standing up. Most of them were quiet, not saying a word. That deserved analysis. People needed to hear that. They needed to hear from the crazy Republicans as well about what they were doing, because and we needed to know more about the history and how important this was. I was very disappointed in what they did.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've never even heard of those people Jim was referring to, those networks. but no, it is
the generation gap. Yeah,
it is. And I think it is the effect of Trump too that dictates that, how we care about some things more than we did, because he has derided the news industry for so long that they're now afraid of themselves overdoing it. They're afraid of overanalyzing it, of being seen as biased. And I think that's some of the success of Trump.
This is a great point. Excuse me for interrupting, but first of all, derided is a ding word. But I do think that derision that you talk about, he's applied to two things that are very pertinent. One is the media, that's what you've just talked about, and the other is the legal system, the weaponized legal system, right? So you have the intersection of two things that Donald Trump has helped run down in terms of credibility. Could you speak to that, Jim?
Well, he went after, from the beginning of when he took office, he went after every institution in this country. He went after the media, and he tried to diminish it so it couldn't criticize him, or the criticism wouldn't carry any weight with his supporters. He went after the courts. He diminished the Supreme Court to a political entity, to a point now where nobody really has very few people think it has credibility. He went after our election system and began deriding it from the beginning, and that way he could complain when he lost. So he went after all of those things. One of the ways you see in the media yesterday that I was a little disappointed in both CNN and MSNBC. MSNBC, by the way, had the biggest audience of all last night, bigger than Fox. But what I was disappointed in them was, I thought their news judgment was clouded when Trump had just been indicted in a very serious charge. He goes to the airport. They carry his motorcade, all that other stuff. He gets out of the car and starts to speak, and they cut away because of previous things. That's not smart. This is a guy who's just been indicted. He has a reaction. The American people should have heard that live. They heard it after a few minutes. They taped it and went on later on. But this was not a rally. This is one of those occasions where he deserved to be heard about what he had to say about being indicted.
Michael?
Yeah, I agree. And going back to your question, Mark, the justice, he did go after every institution. Going after the Justice Department is not new to Trump. He's had more opportunity to, because the Justice Department has gone after him more. So I think I don't equate what he has done to our industry with what he has done and what an American president who has members of his cabinet or himself under investigation, because we've seen it. Jimmy Carter had Burt Lance. The Reagan people had a bunch of people. The Clinton people had people that were under investigation. That happens, and the administration always says, "Well, that this is politically motivated. It's a witch hunt. It's a wild goose chase." All of the things we've heard from Trump, but we hear it so much from Trump because there are reasons, and there are 4 different states that are going after him, or 3 in the federal government. So I think that's what makes it different. But the journalism part, it's going to take a while to go under those band-aids that are on right now and really fix the problem.
When
and
we
if you
talk
think,
now, yeah, go ahead.
If you think, let me just one final point. If you think the Justice Department wanted to go after Donald Trump, a former sitting president, you're wrong. The last thing they wanted to do was cause what's happening. They weren't looking to get this guy. They waited 2 years to go after this guy. And the Justice Department is very careful. As you pointed out earlier, Mark, I heard the statistics, and I know this from covering courts. If you're indicted by any court, but especially by the federal government, you're going down. 90% of their cases result in convictions. And out of them, 90 out of the whole entire body, 98% of them are settled. There are agreements where you plead guilty. And I still believe that in the end, he's going to have to do that, because he's not going to want to get on the stand. They're going to kill him if he gets on the stand. And B, that his evidence from his own people. It's just like the January 6th hearings. The key witnesses in this case are Pence, and it's going to be his chief of staff,
Mark Meadows.
These are people, yeah, Meadows. These are people who worked for him, and they're going to come and they're going to testify. Yeah, he cannot. If he has a real attorney, they're going to be telling them over and over again. Conway said this today. George Conway said this today. If I was his attorney, I would recommend that he settle, because that's the only way to get out of it.
Well, it seems, these are unimpeachable witnesses, and that the case against him is so powerful. It's the delay that may be so effective, and I know you guys, doggedly maintain that he'll lose, and that may be the case. But if there's a shot, that is his shot, right? I mean, if he can somehow prevail, then he can erase all of this. I want to ask you a question about the left, Michael, because I feel as though you have a handle on some of the disappointment I was talking about. Speaking of disappointment quickly, I'll just say that I've said this now for a couple of days. People who've listened or watched this show know that I am not happy with Merrick Garland. I'm not one of these guys who's a rah-rah Merrick Garland guy. I think he slow-walked this. I think Jim is right. I think the Justice Department didn't want to bring this case. You talk about a deep state. I think there isn't a deep state, but there is an institution of Washington. If you want to call that the deep state. They slow-walked it. They waited 2 years, as Jim said. I've made the same point in the last couple of days. So, we wouldn't be looking at this deadline being so close to election time if Garland had uncorked this earlier. And I don't want to hear about, they needed to investigate it. Come on. The information was all there. They put together a congressional hearing with it. There was plenty of information, particularly in these charging documents, when you look at who they spoke to charge Donald Trump. So I'd suggest that the delay is part of the institution of Washington being reluctant to charge a former president. Now to the left. Michael, you're in touch with a lot of the progressive movement. And I feel as though, I was making this point in the last hour, the progressive movement feels let down by Biden for any number of reasons. They let him down on, he let them down on minimum wage, Medicare for all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Promises not kept, even the drilling. Tell me if that left will still show up on Election Day.
Well, I think they absolutely will, and I don't know that. I think there's a lot to preach to the left about how Biden didn't let them down, how the Senate let Biden down. Not on all those issues, and maybe conveniently because maybe it isn't part of the core of Biden, and maybe going too far to want to the left pole is not where the president wants to be. And history has said that. I don't know that I agree, but history has said that if you moderate in an election, you're in a general election, you're in better shape because the independents are the ones that are the ones who are in play. How big the independents are, I'm always dubious about that because I always think, I think they overinflate independent voters. Another conversation for another time. But I think that in a way, they've been chastened by what they learned in 2016, and they also don't have that candidate around whom they are coalescing either. So it's a different energy around progressivism this time. Getting young voters out when you have an 80-year-old and a 77-year-old, which if things keep playing out this way, is going to be tough regardless. And the Democrats are going to have to make a big case for that. And I think the Supreme Court is going to be more of an issue, which is good. And going back to what you were saying about attorneys general, I don't think we should ever be rah-rah about the attorney general in a perfect world. So I think it's okay if we have an attorney general who doesn't really sort of inspire people other than lawyers, because that means they're doing their job responsibly, diligently, and with whatever speed. Yes, we all knew a lot of information. We thought he should have been indicted years ago, but there's a lot to a legal case. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of confirmation. There's a lot of putting the pieces together. Just because a House committee was able to get those answers and that information doesn't mean that falls under the same umbrella when it comes to bringing charges.
I don't want to get into a rugby scrum here, but you could have appointed Jack Smith at the very beginning of the Biden administration. You could have. They waited it. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I will not give ground on that point. I think Garland didn't want to bring it.
But I'm also saying that there are practical reasons from legal people I know have told me that. Could it have happened faster? Did we want it to happen faster? Certainly a lot of people did. And you have more people in your camp than exist in the other camps, especially on the Democratic side. But there are also logistical parts of this.
Okay,
yeah, and I think, too, Mark, look, he could have gone earlier, as I said, I think. But when you go against a former president, you want to go with caution. And I think that was what Merrick Garland is. Anything but, he's everything but and cautious. That's what he is. He's cautious. And you can, be upset at him for that. That's fine. But they are going to do it. And I think that, I know was it Rothman? Who was it that told you that they're not going to make it to
Katz?
to court?
Katz is the
knows
who's the former federal prosecutor.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not. But did he say that before yesterday?
He said
because
it.
Yesterday,
he said it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yesterday, and I think before the court hearing, he said it before the court hearing because you're not.
That's correct. That's correct.
And the court hearing showed us something different. The court hearing showed us that these judges, the magistrate, and especially the judge, are taking no guff, and they're not going to delay this case. And Jack Smith made it a very narrow case with a very narrow. Even Barr pointed this out in the interview you played, and then I saw on CNN. This is a much narrower case. This case can get to trial before the election, and because it's going to be played out, you're going to hear Mike Pence is going to be the lead witness. So he's going to be up there, a Republican, testifying to what happened inside that in those rooms.
Not just a Republican, Jim, a Republican who's running for president too,
and who was thoroughly loyal to this man until this one thing. He couldn't do that, but he messed up COVID for this guy. Pence was right on that team who killed people because they didn't take COVID seriously. So he's going to be up there and he's going to carry some credibility. And I think that this trial is going to happen. I think he's going to be found guilty before the election, or he's going to settle.
Wow. Now, I'll remind everybody, there'd be no settlement possible without the proviso that he not run? I mean, you're not pleading to this case and making a settlement, Jim Avila, with any kind of open door to gain the presidency ever again.
No, I think it's stay out of public life, stay in Mar-a-Lago with an ankle bracelet for a period of time. I think that you take away his passport. I think he's treated, all he gets is his freedom. He doesn't have to go to the big house.
But there's also a political reality that makes that not as appealing to Democrats as we may think here, because it eliminates Donald Trump. The risk there is that Joe Biden's your candidate as a Democrat, and the Republicans don't have the burden of Donald Trump, and they nominate someone who could win independent voters and win the presidency, and it changes that election. So the hurrying for that kind of a settlement, I don't think, is what the politicians necessarily want on the Democratic side.
Oh, that's an interesting point too. I mean, that there are. It's a more complex picture than just the legal side, and that's kind of what we've been saying here. That's why the politics and the law Venn diagrams overlap. I want to be clear, just because I'm seeing it in the comments. Obviously, I think Merrick Garland had an investigation going. What I'm talking about is, in my judgment, slow walking the appointment of the special counsel. Then he turns out whatever investigative materials there are to that special counsel, and then the formal charges are ultimately brought, as we've seen. That whole process, I feel, could have been sped up by a couple of years. All right,
but Mark, can I just?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
If Democrats had come into office and that was what they did, it would have stolen the headlines right from the outset. I think people wanted to see the country corrected as well, the economy improve. I mean, it sounds hokey and it sounds dull, but that's part of what the administration at least wanted to do. They didn't want to be a presidency about the indictment of a former president. They weren't. There was legislation, and there were initiatives, and there was success and failure. And then this was happening as background music.
Yeah,
and to Michael's point, when you look at what the Republicans are doing, they're spending all their time talking about, with investigations and everything else, getting nothing done. Biden got lots done in those first 2 years, and I think Michael's right. That was important, and I'm sure that. And I don't think Biden was on the phone to Merrick Garland telling him to prosecute this case now, and I think that was a wise move.
I think he's given Garland independence. I'll give you guys the last word on this for now. I'm sure we can go around and around more in the future. So grateful for your time, guys. Thank you, Jim Avila. Thank you, Michael Shure. And we'll see you next week. All right, so long. Or at the next indictment. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped. And please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.